morning. Let's come to order and go on the record, please. I'm Charlotte Mitchell, Chair of the Utilities Commission, and with me this morning are Commissioners Duffley, Hughes, McKissick, Kimmerite, Brawley, and Tucker. In compliance with State Government Ethics Act, I remind members of the Commission of our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and inquire at this time as to whether any member of the Commission has a known conflict with respect to the matters coming before us this morning. The record will reflect that no conflicts have been identified, so we will proceed with our first item.
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Tommy Williamson with the Public Staff Energy Division. Item 1 is a request from Duke Energy Carolinas and Duke Energy Progress filed on August 9th, 2023 to modify and extend the limited waiver of Commission Rule R12-11M2. The public staff has reviewed the request and does not object to the request as filed. It's our understanding that the Commission staff has an order to propose and also that the company is here to answer any Commission questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Williamson. The Commission has questions for the company. If you would, sir, please give way for representatives from the company. Just gonna get it.
Good morning, Chair Mitchell and Commissioners. Kathleen Richard on behalf of DEC and DEP. We do have a company representative here today, Mitch Carmasino. He is the General Manager of Accounts Receivable, and he's available for questions.
All right, thank you, Ms. Richards. If we could have the gentleman approach, please. All right, it's Carmasino. If you would, please just introduce yourself for the record, and then I will see which of my colleagues has questions for you.
Sure. Mitch Carmasino, Duke Energy, General Manager of Accounts Receivable.
All right, questions from commissioners. Let's see who has questions. Okay, Commissioner Hughes, you're up.
Thank you. A couple. Let's start with, could you walk me through quickly the disconnection process, assuming that I'm a household that would fit into this waiver? In other words, you haven't been able to reach me. So starting from my late bill all the way to eventual disconnection.
Sure. So you would get a late bill, a reminder message, if you will, and then your next on-cycle bill would be a disconnect notice, your 10-day notice. You then would receive your 24-hour notice. Then on the day of disconnection, you would receive a text, email starting at 8, and then approximately 8:30, the call campaigns go out, letting you know of the disconnect. Then the disconnects at this time start at 3 p.m., the remote disconnects.
Okay, so if I understand, that would be assuming that you had record that I received an email or a call. As far as the waiver goes and the proposed modification to the waiver, walk me through that. My phone was disconnected.
Sure.
And I don't have an email account. Just walk me through the same process.
Sure. Currently, if the call or text are not successful, then we would get notification of that, and then we would roll a truck to the house to make the site visit, knock on the door, leave the tag as appropriate.
And then when would disconnection occur? So there'd be two outcomes after that. One is if you didn't hear anything back from me, when would disconnection occur?
That's correct. So the disconnect would occur the next day.
Okay, so approximately 24 hours after
Yes.
the door hanger. And then if somebody was there, if I was there and talked to the Duke staff member, what would happen?
It depends if they wanted to make a payment, or we would have them make a payment. We would stop the disconnection, or we would disconnect the meter at that time.
Okay, so I just want to be really clear on this. So it's possible that if I said, I can't pay, then the disconnection would just go ahead that day. So it would actually go through earlier than if I wasn't home.
No, I apologize if that's what you're saying. So if the call and text is not successful, then we would go to your house the next day. We would try to make a premises visit, knock on the door, and the disconnection would happen at that time, regardless of whether you were there or not, short of making a payment arrangement or making a payment.
Okay, yeah, that was not clear to me. So, so somebody arrives at my door, I'm not there, they knock on the door, they would leave a door hanger if they couldn't talk to me, and then sometime, is it 2 hours, 5 hours after that door hanger is left, the actual disconnection will occur?
Within 15 minutes.
Okay, so there's a door hanger, and then within 15 minutes, there's a disconnection.
Correct.
Okay. You provided some good data and numbers in your request. One of the things you talked about was a success rate for those visits. So, and success rate is being, I just want to make sure I understand how you're defining it. It's somebody knocks on the door, I answer, and then I say, oh, I didn't have email. I didn't realize I was late. I want to pay, and I pay. Is that a success rate, or is a success rate just that I open the door?
A success rate is when we make contact with a consumer at home.
Okay,
So
so
regardless of whether they make a payment or anything, it's when we actually get to speak with the consumer, adult consumer.
okay, and so do you have the numbers of? I know it's very relatively low of consumers that you can actually communicate with. What percentage of, and if you put this in your application, I apologize, what percentage of those interactions result in someone being able to pay versus someone saying, well, go ahead and disconnect me because I can't pay?
Right. We tracked the number of customer interactions, which is what we put in there. We were able to meet 15% of those customers. So a subset of them would have taken action.
I mean, the way I would personally define success would be the people that took action and weren't disconnected. So, I mean, that would be one way of defining success. And you don't know of that.
We didn't track it that way. We tracked just how many customers were home that answered the door that we had that face-to-face conversation with.
Do you have a gut feeling whether the face-to-face interaction tends to result in not having a disconnect?
I don't. I would say no, because we're still disconnecting a lot of those customers.
Okay, so gut feeling is even with a quote successful face-to-face contact, they're still disconnected.
Correct.
For now, that's all. I might have a follow-up.
Commissioner McKissick.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, just for the record, to make certain that I'm understanding the way things work today. When it comes to disconnections, are they made remotely rather than on the premises? I mean, is that the way DNC and DEP are going it, now that you have the AMI metering?
Yes, so they're disconnected at the meter, but they're disconnected remotely. So on the reconnect, it can occur remotely as well.
And let me ask you this: when you send somebody out to the premises, what is the frequency of actually sending people out to the premises? I mean, I saw some data that was, I guess it was from one of the filings. It said between January of 21 and July of 22, electronic contact was successfully made on the day of disconnection at a rate of 67% for DEC and 72% for DEP. Are those numbers still approximately correct?
That is correct, yes. We make successful phone contact approximately 70% of the time.
Okay. So it's that remaining 30% of the time that you're sending someone out.
Correct.
And when you go out to the premises, what does the representative from Duke actually do? I mean, do they knock on the door, and if unsuccessful and someone answering, is that when they leave the door hanger? Or explain to me how that process actually works.
Yeah, so they go knock on the door, try to make contact with the adult consumer, see if they're able to make a payment, leave them the door tag at that time. If they're not able to make a payment, they would continue to disconnect the meter. If there's nobody home, they would leave the door tag and then move forward with disconnecting the meter as well.
And if they're able to make a payment or a payment arrangement, would it be correct to assume that power is not disconnected?
Yes.
All right. And from what I gather, I think from looking at some of the other data here, it said that approximately 11% of site visits result in personal contact. But I heard you say a little earlier that it's 15%? Or
Yes, that's up a little bit more.
it's up a little bit more. Okay. And of that 15%, do we know what of that universe actually results in making a payment or payment arrangement?
I do not at this time.
You do not know? Okay. And I'm just curious, when they make a contact by email or some type of electronic means, how is it confirmed that the person has actually received that communication?
So we don't track email communication. So like, for example, we started text campaigns. Generally speaking, the texts go out at 8. The calls go out at 8:30. So people take action between 8 and 8:30. That's how we know that the texts are successful. Now, I don't know when somebody reads an email, but assuming they make a payment, then the disconnect is automatically stopped.
And what's the rate of people who receive those notifications by, say, text messaging, that they actually take some action before power is turned off to avoid disconnection?
Again, we don't track the number of folks that take action. We do have a lot of people that their disconnects are canceled. I would say on the day of disconnection, as a rule of thumb, generally about 50% of the notices that go out, people take action.
And I believe I remember reading someplace that they typically take action before 1 p.m.
That is correct.
And that's why they're looking at pushing back the turn-off time to 3 p.m., is that correct?
We would like to turn it back from 3 to 1.
Excuse me, 3 to 1.
Yes.
There we go. Yeah, I misstated that. Now, I'm just curious, as it presently stands, do we have any data that would help us determine, I guess, I heard you say before you're not sure of the number that actually able to intervene and resume, make sure their power doesn't get disconnected, but do you have any way of capturing that data? If we needed that data captured, I assume you could go back and establish a means of doing so?
Yes, we should be able to get that data.
And could that be done without any great challenge, or would it be problematic obtaining that, or is it something that probably can be done if we establish that as a metric that would be insightful?
That is correct. If we couldn't get it, we could establish it as a metrics and get it going forward. But I
And-
think we should be able to get it.
You think so?
Mhm.
And then lastly, to what extent, when a representative from Duke goes out, they either knock on the door, and do they run into some type of threatening situation with a person at that household, which would put them at risk?
Yeah, so in North Carolina, we have approximately 3,000 accounts that are coded as hostile, which means somebody has made a threat to our employees at one point or another. And when we talk about safety, I think it's greater than just potentially hostile customers, right? It's the risk of dogs, or it's the risk of traffic accidents, the risk of disease, people being sick face to face, all of that comes together.
And if somebody's kind of on that list of that 3,000, what is the company's policy about going to that premises to attempt to make a contact before disconnection?
Right, they would just take extra caution, and if it got too bad, they would probably seek police assistance.
And do you have any idea of how often that might occur?
I mean, we've had, the number of accounts is 3,000, so I would say we probably had close to 3,000 people that have threatened an employee at one point or another.
Okay. Thank you. I don't have any further questions at this time.
All right, any additional questions? Go ahead, Commissioner Hughes.
I think there's a statistic that, I think it varies for DEC and DEP, but between 7 and 8% of people historically have, I suppose, paid and then not been disconnected between 1 and 3 p.m. Am I understanding that?
That is the percent that paid at that time, yes.
Okay. So under this new policy, if this new policy had been in effect previously, and there had been no change, I mean, I think the supposition is that once people get the message that disconnections occur at 1, some of those people will, I think that's what you hope, some of those people will pay before 1. But if they didn't, I'm having a hard time tracking just the percentages against different percentages totals. How many customers in November was that? Like 8% between 1 and 3, roughly. How many customers was that?
I don't have the number that was disconnected in November in front of me, so I would have to get that and get back to you, but it's generally not that many.
So it's 8% of the people that at that point were going to be disconnected. So whatever the total was, it's 8% of that number weighted or were in that 1 to 3 range.
Correct.
You say that's not that small number. Is it 100 or is it 3,000?
It's a smaller number, maybe closer probably to 100.
100.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be in DEC and DEP.
I'm sorry.
That would be in each service area. That would be 100 in DEC and DEP, or that
We
would be
usually,
to,
generally speaking, there's more disconnects in DEC versus DEP, so it would depend on the number that day.
okay. I'm just trying to, so roughly 100 under this policy, if they don't change their behavior, 100 people that would have prevented disconnection every month would be disconnected until they change their behavior.
Correct.
Okay. I think that's all I needed. Thanks.
All right, Commissioner Brawley.
Thank you, Chairman. Do you do paperless billing?
Yes.
When you're sending a notice of disconnection, is that also done paperlessly?
Yes.
So that in a situation where someone has paperless billing, you're not actually going to mail something to the address?
They would get, yeah, that is true.
Okay. You're going through your processes and you've sent messages, you've texted, you've called. How do you know that you have successfully reached the person? Is there some metric other than them calling and saying, I'm paying the bill?
Calling and paying the bill, we do get, whether the call was delivered on the day of disconnection. But other than that, there is no way.
Okay. When we were discussing this earlier, I somehow got the impression the site visit was on the day prior to the disconnection, and that the door hanger was left prior to the day of disconnection. But if I'm understanding correctly today, the door hanger is delivered, I'm about to cut your power off, or it's left on the front door when someone comes home so they'll know the reason their power's off is not because there was a system failure, they've actually been cut off.
Correct.
I was thinking about a hypothetical. I'm a woman going through a divorce, not the most pleasant. I have the home. My husband has been paying the bills, and he does paperless billing. He's got notices for disconnect for the power bill that he didn't pay. He's getting the text. He's getting the calls. There might come a morning where a man knocks on my door and says, your power bill is past due. This is the first I've heard about it, and I've got to immediately make arrangements. With that previous day's visit, there might be an opportunity for me to address that bill. But I might not be able to do anything other than saying I'd like to work out a payment arrangement because I had no idea that this was being called. Is that a realistic scenario?
I would probably say that at that point, if she was now the customer and he wasn't, she would probably apply for service and we would get her service turned back on.
But her power would be cut off.
Correct, but we would also turn it back on in a very quick time.
Give me a sense of how long that might be.
From her call, probably 10 minutes.
No, I mean from her call or. Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah.
So if your man shows up, explains it, she had no knowledge at that point, you probably would not cut the power off.
We would tell her to call and establish service in her name correctly.
Okay.
And if she was cut, she would just call and we would establish the service as well.
The visit, however, may result in a situation where they get the visit, and then their power is going to be cut off if they can't address the situation immediately. It's not like you got the door hanger when you got home from work and by 10 o'clock tomorrow you better do something. It's your power's already off. How easy is it for someone to pay and reestablish their service if they got home at 5 o'clock and the power was off?
Fairly quick. It would be just a matter of calling, making arrangements, making a payment, and then their service would be restored within 10 to 15 minutes.
All right. Thank you, sir.
All right, any additional questions from commissioners? All right, I'll take a motion.
Chair, I move that this item be taken upstairs for further discussion.
All right, we've got a motion that's been seconded that the item be removed into executive session for discussion. Any questions or discussion on that motion? All right, hearing none, all in favor indicate with an aye. Aye. Any opposed? And that motion carries. Thank you very much. You may step down. Thank you. All right, we will now move to our second item.
Good morning. I'm Jay Lucas with the Public Staff's Energy Division. Item 2 is a request by Duke Energy for commissioned acceptance of a multi-fuel calculation method for determining the number and types of RECs that will be produced by a biogas facility that is owned by Carbon Cycle Energy. The Public Staff recommends that the commission accept the multi-fuel calculation method.
Move approval of staff recommendation.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that the item be approved as recommended by the public staff. Any questions or discussion on that motion? All right, hearing none, all in favor indicate with an aye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? All right, that motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Lucas. All right, we will now move to our third item.
Good morning. I'm Lindsay Darden, engineer of the Public Staff Water, Sewer, and Telephone Division, presenting the supplemental agenda item in docket number W-1139 sub 4. On January 3rd, the public staff filed a motion to replace the emergency operator for wastewater treatment service for Gingite Woods subdivision in Dare County, North Carolina. The public staff recommends that the commission issue the proposed order provided to the commission staff approving the replacement of the emergency operator and requiring customer notice.
All right, Ms. Darden, Commission has a few questions for you. I'm hoping you can answer them. It's my understanding that there's a representative from the applicant, and we can hear from the applicant if necessary. All right, first question, are all 38 customers on the sewer system residential customers?
Yes.
Okay, so in the record, there's reference to is it the Gingite Center?
Mm-hmm.
How do I pronounce that?
We've
Gingite?
been saying Gingite.
Gingite, all right. The Gingite Center, was the Gingite Center ever constructed?
Not yet. It is a commercial property that's been acquired by affiliates of GWWTP, or the Gingite Woods wastewater treatment plant.
Does the public staff have reason to believe it will be developed with non-residential properties?
Yes.
Okay.
It's planned for 36 townhomes and then some retail property, a restaurant, and office space.
Okay, and do you have a sense of, does the public staff have a sense of timing of the construction?
The last that we discussed, it would be, the idea is approximately the next 2 years.
Got it. Okay, thank you. Is there, beyond what you've just described for me, is there any potential for growth in the Gingot Woods subdivision?
Not at this time.
Okay. Who operated the wastewater utility system subsequent to Envirotech?
The original owner was Neil Blinken, and he had used Envirotech as the contract operators from the beginning.
But before Atlantic OBX came in, was there an intervening operator?
Yes,
Was it EnviroLink?
yes. So
Okay.
Envirotech was the emergency operator, which was approved, I think it was in November of 2009. And they sold their operations, part of their company, to EnviroLink, and that's when EnviroLink took over operations, and GWWTP replaced them in April 2022 with Atlantic OBX.
Do you know what was the motivating factor for the replacement of EnviroLink with Atlantic OBX?
They weren't satisfied with the service. They're having issues with violations and just operations, and so that's what initiated them making that switch.
So do I understand you to mean that GWWTP was not satisfied with the operational performance of EnviroLink?
Yes.
And did EnviroLink incur, were there environmental violations associated with the system during the time which the system was operated by EnviroLink?
Yes.
Okay. Do you know about how long EnviroLink was operating the system?
They, a little bit, I guess less than a year. They started operating in August 2021, and Atlantic OBX started in April 2022.
Okay. What can you tell me about when GWWTP got involved in the operation of the system?
They purchased the system in around March 2017. I'm not sure what you mean by their involvement.
Well, so who owned the system prior to GWWTP's owning the system?
Paragon Utilities Incorporated, they acquired the system in March of 2010, but they did not inform the commission. And then GWWTP acquired from Paragon, and again, did not inform the commission. So all of this process is kind of spurred of trying to gain their legitimacy of operations and ownership and kind of clean everything up.
And achieve regulatory compliance?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so based on what the public staff has been able to determine, since GWWTP has been in control of the system, it has been operated soundly. Is that correct?
There's still been some operation issues and violations of just kind of taking the time to restore the plant. There's a lot of improvements that are still needed, and what the struggle GWWTP has been facing is they've invested money in fixing the plant, but they're wanting to gain the proper authority before they continue to make the investments that the plant requires to operate more smoothly.
Okay, so at this point in time, does the public staff have any concerns about GWWTP's approach to ownership and control of this system, or let me just stop there.
Not at this time. We've been working with the company, and they are planning to submit an amended application for their initially filed transfer to provide more information and amend it and file it as a CPCN. So we're going to continue with our investigation and due diligence when that's been officially filed.
Okay, has the public staff received any complaints from customers since GWWTP has been in control?
Our consumer services have not received any complaints, but there has been 9 consumer statements that have been filed when customer notice went out for this filing. Most of the consumer statements have to do with the increase in rates that are included on the application, and a few of the complaints do mention operation or service issues, smell, odor, and occasional overflows, but those were concerns that we had known about and correlate with the fact that the plant is being worked on and improved and still needs improvements.
Ms. Darden, what kind of system is that? What kind of wastewater treatment plant is this?
I'm not sure exactly
Okay.
how you would classify it.
Got it. I don't remember reading much about plant design in the record, so I was just curious if you knew off the top of your head. Mr. Jonas, you want to fill in?
Here for the assist. I know Lindsay had a lot to cover here, and it's a complicated situation. It is an extended aeration plant. It's a steel package plant, pretty small in size. They have either spray irrigation or essentially a irrigation pond or lagoon. It's my understanding that they predominantly dispose into that lagoon that is right next to the residential. So if you look at an aerial map, the residential is kind of wrapped around this along that main road there. So you have this package plant, which is literally right against the driveway of some of these residential homes, and then this disposal area right near there. So you can understand due to the proximity, if this plant is not operating under ideal conditions, that you're gonna have those odor concerns. But yeah, so this is small package plant, and like she said, they have made some physical improvements to that plant, but it's still a work in progress.
Okay. Following up there, the record refers to $444,000 approximately in improvements made to the plant. What can you all tell us about the nature of those improvements?
They're focused on, they kind of have two focuses on the front end of their plant and the back end. And so on the front end, they've replaced steel tanks, aeration tank, an EQ tank, and a digester, and then a few smaller ticket items like replacement of blowers. And so that's encompassing what they have spent, and then their further spend is mainly focused on the back end of the plant.
Okay. And what do you mean by back end?
The treatment trains that are running on what they call the back end of the plant, I guess could be
So
interpreted.
whatever technology is necessary to make sure the effluent discharge is compliant with.
Correct. So you're
State
getting
law.
into the aeration basin, and then ultimately any pumps that deal with the disposal of the effluent. There also need to be improvements likely to that irrigation system and development of that irrigation system. So it's ultimately what they decide needs to be done to become compliant. I will say these costs have not been fully audited, and that would be part of the CPCN application that is in the works.
Okay, that's helpful, thank you. All right, last question. The provisional interim monthly flat rate of $180, you all recall this? Okay. And the footnote contained on Appendix A, the single-family equivalent of 360 gallons per day. Is the 300, we just want you to sort of help us understand the 360 gallons per day. Is that a standard that's set by the Department of Environmental Quality?
It is, and for this case, that would represent one home for the 38 residential customers that are there. There has been, House Bill 600 has revised their definition of their gallons per day per bedroom to 75, so that's something that in the CPCN we might address of defining that a little bit differently when we would come to set rates in the future. But for now, that does represent one home.
Okay. All right, understood. All right, let me see if there are any additional questions. Commissioner Kimmerite.
Follow-up question from Chair Mitchell. One of the findings of facts mentions that August 2021, Envirotech abandoned its role as emergency operator. Can you explain that a little bit more? Because in 2020, EnviroLink had acquired Envirotech and presumably was operating all of its systems. So can you describe whether that's an accurate statement that Envirotech rather than EnviroLink abandoned its role?
I'll go ahead and take this. So the regulated utility Envirotech was the emergency operator, and I think we need to distinguish those two things. You have an operations company and a utility. The utility was the identified emergency operator by the commission. So no matter what happened, until they were officially discharged by the commission, they had a responsibility as emergency operator. So up until today, and possibly whatever date this commission potentially approves that discharge, Envirotech, the utility, is responsible as emergency operator. At that point, you had a distinction between when the operations company was acquired by EnviroLink. Then there was a transition period where EnviroLink sort of started to actually operate the systems that they acquired. And as part of that transition, EnviroLink started to operate this system. And then it is based on information and belief that EnviroLink was actually billing the customers in Gingite Woods. And so we're trying to identify that exact date when that distinction happened. And this is part of these caveats that we've made, that we continue to investigate both Envirotech and EnviroLink's roles here, and anticipate potential future filings. Because, and I'll say this on my own behalf, I'm a strong believer that there should be consequences for what has happened here. This is not okay for customers, and those two entities, both Envirotech as a regulated utility by this commission and EnviroLink as an operator for numerous commission-regulated utilities, and also a potential ownership stake in commission-regulated utilities, or at least related parties, they should know better than what has happened here. So the date might not be exactly perfect, but it's something we continue to investigate in discovery.
All right, let's see if there are any additional questions. All right, anything additional from the applicant?
I think Mr. Finley is here on behalf of GWWTP.
This Commissioner Edward Finley, I'll be on behalf of the applicant. Just put this in a little bit of context. The company and the public staff have been working carefully on this issue for a number of months. Back in February of 2023, the company filed an application to transfer the CPCN from the original owner to the current owner of the property and the people who've been running it ever since 2029, I think. The public staff is of the view that that should not have been a transfer application, but it should be a request for a CPCN instead, and is of the view that this issue of the emergency operator should be addressed in the meantime. As I think Ms. Darden mentioned, the parties have been in close discussions, and the applicant is in the position to file the application for the CPCN right away, and they're very anxious to get all this straightened out and move forward and be able to improve the system and provide service to the customers. A lot of this has happened that should have happened with the approval of the commission, and it was not. And we laid all that out in our filing in 2023 of February. So everybody's trying to come clean. It's not a situation where people were trying to do anything underhanded or surreptitiously. It was open and clear what was going on, but the formalities have not been complied with, and the effort on the part of the company right now who's making the application is to get all that straightened out and to move forward and make the improvements needed. And so we would respectfully request that when this CPCN is filed, and I think the public staff has talked to the company at great length, and hopefully we're pretty close to having that application in the status that the public staff will agree with, we can go ahead and get a CPCN and get rid of this emergency operator. There should be a temporary solution, the emergency operator. We need a CPCN, so we pretty much request the company, the commission, to address that as quickly as it can. And if I've misstated anything, please let us know.
All right, thank you, Mr. Finley. Questions while we've got him here for Mr. Finley? Go ahead.
So Chair, I'd like to make a motion to move this item upstairs for further discussion.
Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded that the item be removed to executive session for further discussion. Questions or discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all in favor indicate with an eye. Aye. Is there anyone opposed? Or motion carries. All right, thank you all. All right, commission has before us for approval our minutes from the December 18th staff conference. I'll take a motion.
Second.
All right, now it's been moved and seconded that those minutes be approved. Any questions or discussion there? All right, all in favor indicate with an eye. Is there anyone opposed? All right, and that motion carries. All right, next up, it's my understanding that representatives from Duke Energy are here to present to the commission.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chair Mitchell, LaDon Toon on behalf of DEC and DEP. The companies are appearing before the commission today to discuss last week's peak load management alerts. I am joined by Venu Ganta, who is Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and Policy, as well as Ms. Dewey, who is Vice President of Products and Services. And finally, Ms. Mason Duff, General Manager of Customer Solutions and Regulatory Enablement. The representatives have prepared a short presentation which Mr. Drack has just provided each of the commissioners, and of course are available to answer any questions that commissioners might have.
All right, thank you, Ms. Toon. You all may take it away.
All right. Good morning, Chair Mitchell and Commissioners, and thank you for your time today. My name is Venu Ganta, Vice President of Regulatory Affairs and Policy for Duke Energy. We're here today to provide background on the communication that went out to customers Thursday, January 4th, calling for customers to conserve energy due to high energy demand expected from 6 to 9 a.m. on Friday, January 5th. Foremost, we want to apologize for the confusion this caused for some customers who may have concluded there was a threat to grid reliability, and we are committed to improvements in our communication going forward. I want to emphasize that we did not have concerns about grid reliability going into last Friday, as our system operators had more than adequate resources to meet customer energy needs. I'm joined today here by two of my colleagues in the EEDSM program that can provide more insight into last Thursday's communication and our plans for improvement going forward. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Megan Dewey. I'm Vice President of Products and Services. Thank you for having us. I also want to second and say on behalf of Duke Energy and our customer program team, we sincerely apologize for the confusion that we caused our customers and communities on January 4th. As Mr. Ganta said, there really was no grid reliability emergency on the morning of January 5th. Instead, the notice that we sent to customers was under our existing My Home Energy report. We'll continue to refer to that as MyHer, and a new enhancement we added to the program called the Peak Load Management Alerts. This alert is intended to increase peak demand savings and lower costs for our customers. We know that we have work to do to improve our communications and the clarity of those communications, and we are very much committed to doing that moving forward. Please know that we have paused all future MyHer peak load management alerts until that and we will not reinstate them until we work on our process improvements and communication improvements. For the benefit of the Commission today, I'd like to provide you a bit of context on the MyHer program and the new enhancement that we have added, the Peak Load Management Alert. And I'll walk through a brief history of the January alert and then provide you a quick overview of our corrective actions. And you do have in front of you a couple of slides that will help introduce the MyHer program as well as the event and the communications that were sent. So the MyHer program is a low-cost way for Duke Energy to engage and motivate our customers to save energy by adopting energy savings behaviors long-term. The program provides comparative usage data for similar residences and the same geographic area to motivate them to better manage and reduce their energy use by providing them personalized energy savings tips. We are continually looking for ways to improve the program, and one of the ways that we do that is through our evaluation and measurement and verification results. Through those results, recent results, we identified an opportunity to enhance the program by adding the peak load management alert. I'm going to give it over to my colleague Tim Duff to provide you a brief overview of the evaluation, measurement, and verification results that led to these peak load management alert enhancements.
Thank you, Ms. Dewey. Good morning, Commission. As I was introduced, my name is Tim Duff. I'm the General Manager of Customer Solutions and Regulatory Enablement, and really want to talk about the evaluation, measurement and verification, or EM&V, that led to this enhancement. The MyHer program has a long history of engagement with customers, and as part of that engagement, we are frequently looking to respond to feedback from customers, market conditions, technology, and the evaluation, measurement, and verification, which is performed by an independent third party through different times in the program's operation to understand that the impact it is having on our customers and utility system, as well as the program's cost effectiveness. In 2022, we received an EM&V for the program that indicated that the energy savings per participant had actually increased. However, the capacity or alignment of those savings with peak periods of demand had diminished. That impacts the program's cost effectiveness because, to put it very simply, while there are more savings occurring, they're not occurring at the times that have the most meaning to the utility system and customers. So, in order to address that, the program team looked to try and come up with an enhancement that would direct customers to have the occurrence of those energy savings occur when they were worth the most. So I think about this very simply as traditionally we'll say things like you've got a energy efficient LED bulb. Instead of putting it in a socket that you use 1 hour a day, put it in a socket where you use it 4 hours a day. These alerts were designed to get customers aware of when those high energy use periods were, so that the energy efficiency savings and the actions that they're taking through our tips can have the most meaning to the utility system. And I'll turn it back over to Ms. Dewey to talk about how we tested those alerts and going into the January event.
Thank you, Tim. So as Tim mentioned, it was really important for us to find a way to test whether these alerts would actually produce the KW savings that we anticipated. So in 2023, we launched the test to 35,000 customers throughout the Carolinas. We notified the customers in advance of the potential alerts and gave them an opportunity to opt out. Throughout 2023, a total of 6 alerts were sent, 1 in March, 4 in the summer, and 1 in December. Communications included both pre- and post-alert and email texts. Importantly, the results of this test were actually quite encouraging. With respect to the pre-event customer notification, we had a relatively high rate of engagement with the communications and a low rate of opt-out. During the actual test of the alerts, we received no negative feedback from our customers. And in fact, preliminary analysis showed that there was a small amount of energy savings among our notified customers. Based on these results, we decided to expand the enhancement to 1.3 million MyHer participants throughout the Carolinas. Just as was done with our 2023 test, we sent a welcome email, including opt-out messaging to introduce the program. The welcome communication was sent on December 19th and 20th of 2023. And included an explanation of the program, what a high demand day was, and how the alerts would actually work. Again, just as was with the tests, Engagement in the welcome email was quite strong. We saw about a 35% open rate, which is very good for company standards, and an opt-out rate remained very low at less than 1%. And we saw no noticeable increases in calls or emails relative to the program. So I'll move on to the actual event itself. So once we had finalized plans to enhance and expand the alerts enhancement, and once the welcome email was sent, we were waiting for a day on which the system conditions would actually warrant the peak load management alert. Meaning, again, a day on which the peak demand was projected to be high and the reduced customer usage would be the most beneficial. So on January 4th, the company identified January 5th as a potential weak peak demand day, winter peak demand day, excuse me. So the use of the alert was designed to reduce the peak on January 5th, just as it has done during the test in 2023. We did think this was a sound use of the peak alert management, peak load management alert. So once again, to be clear, our system operators had more than enough resources to meet the forecasted demand on January 5th, and there was no reliability threat on the grid. Instead, the intent of the alert is to really target reductions in energy demand for purposes of cost savings. So for the alert itself, in January, we sent approximately 1.3 million emails to customers and 1.1 million texts. Open rates for the email were generally high, especially among those enrolled in the TOU Critical Peak Pricing Program and the alerts itself. Now I'll move on to an overview of the corrective actions. So following the issuance of the first round of text alerts, we did realize that there was significant customer confusion. The confusion primarily related to the customer's concern that the alerts meant that there was a reliability threat to the grid, which, as we've mentioned, was not the case. So on the evening of January 4th, to mitigate further confusion, we did add an IVR as well as a banner to the website to assure customers that this was not a grid reliability threat. Our call center reps were provided talking points to address customer confusion. We did stop the remaining texts to be sent, and then our corporate communication team was provided information to help respond to media inquiries and to have those media reps update their published stories. So while we do see a lot of value in this program, we know that we have work to do to improve our communications, among other things. We are working diligently to do that as we speak. We also know that we have work to do to better inform the public and yourselves and internally making sure that everyone understands that we are launching this program. And we have work to do on our internal processes and procedures. Once we have these improvements completed, we continue to believe that this program will add a lot of value to our customers and help them reduce costs. Thank you, and we'll take questions now.
All right, Ms. Dewey, first of all, thank you for the explanation. It's very helpful to have complete context for the events of last week. Before I see if there are questions from my colleagues up here, I want to say that I'm very encouraged by this program. This seems to be of the type that we have been directing the company to pursue for some time now. And what I've heard you say today, now you correct me if I misunderstood, is that you all have looked for ways to target customer behavior at times when the system is most in need, and that's what you feel that you've accomplished with this program based on the test you ran last year and the results of that test. So in my mind, this is a very good and necessary step forward. I recognize that there was confusion that arose on the 4th around the communication that went out to customers. But I think I also heard you say, and again, correct me if I misheard, that you all sent out a welcome email, that was the way you described it, in advance of this communication. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so customers that actually opened that email would have been informed that this is a new, this alert is a new component of the MyHer program, and customers could expect them at times when the company had determined that these alerts would be beneficial to the system?
Correct.
Okay. So I think it's fair that customers and sort of the community at large is on edge given the events of Winter Storm Elliott and everything that we've learned over the past year about the stress that the electric system was under. I think that the companies, even though the company did send out this initial email alerting MyHer participants that this was coming, I guess your conclusion that perhaps a little additional communication would have been helpful here is a sound one. But I want to also make sure I heard correctly you all say that you were using the word beneficial, this program being beneficial, having beneficial results, having benefiting customers. What do you mean by that? Do you mean that this program or these alerts could actually save customers money?
Yes, for participating customers, it should result in bill savings. For non-participating customers, long-term savings will occur given lower operating costs for the system.
So is that, I mean, when you talk about, I'm trying to remember exactly how you phrased it. You said peak load management alerts. That's how you all have defined these or characterized these. I understand that to be an effort to shave the peak. Is that right?
Correct. Correct.
And so what happens from an operational standpoint if you're shaving the peak?
Well, long term, you really want to shape the load so that moving forward, you have a reduced load long term during those peak days. Tim, do you want to add anything to that?
Can you translate that a little bit into sort of, if I'm just a regular old customer listening to this or trying to understand what's going on, what does that mean?
So there's a number of ways it translates. In the shorter term, you'll see things like potentially less purchase power or fuel being burned at those high cost times, which will translate into fuel rider relief. And then longer term, as Ms. Dewey said, you'll see lower investment in assets associated with the clean energy transition. We won't have to build as much because you'll be reducing that long-term peak. Because it's part of an energy efficiency program, it's modeled before we determine what supply-side resources are necessary in the long term. So by having it in there, what you're doing is modeling a lower peak, which reduces the need for future investment in both T&D and generating capacity.
So you're trying to give yourself something to plan around here ultimately in the much longer term.
That's correct.
Okay. But Mr. Duff, Ms. Dewey, so what I'm hearing you say is that really this is aimed at putting the system and therefore its customers in a position to avoid costs.
That's correct.
Okay. Okay. Ms. Dewey, you mentioned, this is just a point of curiosity for me, but you mentioned customers enrolled in the TOU and in the alerts, in the TOU rate schedules, and how many of those customers are there?
There's a couple of thousand, I think maybe 5,000 customers currently are enrolled in our TOU CPP rate.
And is that among both BAs?
I believe so.
Okay.
But we'll follow up with the exact statistic for you.
Okay. Okay. All right. And then you mentioned on the night of the 4th, once it became known to you all that there was some confusion here and there was some consternation among customers about this alert and the reason for the alert. You mentioned that a banner went up on the website, and there was an IVR. What is IVR?
I'm blanking on what the acronym stands for, but it is when you call into the call center, it's an automated message that provides you information.
Okay. So there was some kind of explanation then, an automated explanation provided to the extent a customer goes so far as to call into the company?
Correct.
Okay, that's helpful. I want to just reiterate before I step down here that this is the type of program that the commission has been asking the company to undertake for as long as I've been up here. Step in the right direction, and we need to get it right. And I'm encouraged by the results that you have described today and that you saw in 23. I think I heard you say you saw some results last week when you called on customers. And there are differences, obviously, between energy emergencies and system emergencies and days like we were having last week where you all were just projecting high demand. And so we need to make sure customers are aware of those. And there are many reasons we need to make sure customers are aware of those differences, not the least of which is just making sure we don't cause undue stress. But having customers participate in avoiding costs is absolutely critical going forward. And we need you to continue to endeavor to enable that. Customers are available to participate. They want to participate. And what I'm hearing from you all today is that they did participate when you called on them. So let's continue to engage with those customers and have them play a part in managing costs. I understand that you all have hit pause on this. I hope you get it together quickly and take the pause button off. We are early in the winter. There's a long way to go yet, so please get it together and let's get this program back in effect as soon as possible and as soon as everyone's comfortable enabling that. With that, I'll see if there are any questions from commissioners. All right, I will start with Commissioner Duffley.
Thank you for coming today, and I echo Chair Mitchell's enthusiasm and encouragement of this program that you've started. With respect to the initial test in 2023, you said you had 35,000 customers and you conducted 6 alerts. I assume those alerts were similarly worded.
Yes, they were similarly worded. The text had a bit of different language.
And what was the percentage participation from those 6 texts or email communications?
So in terms of participation, and Tim, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I would say the 35,000 participated because it isn't, we sent it to all of them. The opt-out rate, though, was quite low, less than 1%.
But how many customers of this 35,000 actually reduced their energy consumption?
Okay, I don't have that number off the top of my head of how many customers per se, but what we did see is about a 0.03 kW per customer reduction. That doesn't sound like a lot, but in aggregate, it will be a large amount. Tim, anything to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say that for some events it was higher, some events it was lower. We were kind of looking over those 6 different events. And it's important to remember that some of them were in the summer, so you've got different levers to pull for customers. But it was encouraging to see that we were seeing across that group, that's what the average reduction is. So yes, there were some customers that probably didn't reduce that much, but there were some that reduced more. That's the average.
Okay, thank you. And then moving forward with this program, will you be tracking customer response? And when I say customer response, I mean actual reduction of electric usage.
Yes.
Okay, and you'll be tracking the trends as to you're seeing an increase in participation, a decrease in participation, level participation?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Commissioner Hughes, you have questions?
Yeah, to me, this is really exciting. I completely agree with everything Commissioner Chair Mitchell said. I think it's just, frankly, last year was it's bad timing. You know, I really I received this. I was encouraged when I received it. As a customer, and with last year, I did kind of scratch my head and like we hadn't heard. We hadn't heard about it, but I hope this doesn't slow, it might slow it down a little bit, but I personally agree. I'd like to see things like this move forward. And first thing I wanted to know was how did it work? So that 0.03 kilowatt per customer is from the 35,000, but you now have 1.3 million customer data. Now, granted, there were a certain amount of people that reacted in a very concerned way, but I would guess the vast majority of the 1.3 million, they either didn't open it, or if they did open it, they might have modified their behavior. So when do you think we could hear just what was the impact there?
I think in the next couple of weeks, we should have the data analyzed internally.
I would ask that you share that with us. I think is
Absolutely.
really exciting. And again, as Chair Mitchell said, we have to do everything we can to shift the peak. With that said, I'm curious, just how are these programs interacting or complementing some of the other existing programs you had? You mentioned 5,000 TOU customers. With those customers and now with AMI and Customer Connect, do those customers receive an additional or a separate notification related to their TOU rates, essentially warning them that in that day they're gonna maybe incur significantly higher charges?
Correct. So if you are a customer on the TOU CPP rate, you will be provided a separate communication or a different communication that does allude to the price increase for the CPP timeframe.
And was that sent at the same time as
Yes.
these? Okay.
Yes.
So you would have gotten two. And then the more traditional DSM programs where, there's control over now a thermostat or a hot water heater, did those go into action at this period too?
Those did not. For right now, those are treated as more emergency and grid reliability programs. The TOU CPP and the peak load management alerts are treated more as the high peak demand day load shaping type of programs.
Okay. Have you had recently? Have you had a quote emergency to call in those DSM since last year's emergency?
I do not have that information with me. Tim, do you know?
I think we might have run a demand response test on one of the days that we had one of the events last year, but I don't believe there's been any system emergency events that I'm aware of that caused us to call the DR programs.
Okay. And then kind of putting on my old researcher hat, as far as you looking at the results, I hear that there's an open rate and you keep good track of that. I don't know if you were planning on doing this, but I personally would be really curious to look at, let's say it was 15% for the 1.3 million. What was the response for those versus the people that didn't open it? Will that be something that you take a look at?
Yes.
Okay, and if we could get the results of that, so we would, because I think, with such a highly participated program as MyHER, it's really hard to get these averages because you have people that are doing things and people that are not. And then lastly, the messages that are given to customers as far as the public good of what they're doing, saving the system money, saving customers themselves money. Walk me through what in these different programs, which ones are focused really on a customer level kind of message, like, you know, if you do this, you're going to save this much money versus, you know, a more broad. Because I think there's, you know, the behavioral research has shown that there are a group of people that just focus on the bottom line. So I'm just curious how that works into these messaging.
So for these messages and this program in particular, it is really personalized and individual. So I don't think we really speak to the larger good, but from a corporate enterprise level, and I do have my colleague Taryn Sims here if you'd like to learn more about our communications broadly as a company. We do share information around how our programs are helping for societal benefit. But these EEDSM programs are more around the individual customer, him or herself.
Okay, and I saw that, I didn't have a chance, I saw the example of like a post-event. Is that a generic, or is kind of how the customers did? If I click through where it said, you know, thank you, you worked hard, is the you worked hard being the entire customer base, or is it the you know, the Hughes family?
Personalized for you compared to how you did with your customers around you in your geographic area. And there will also be personalized tips as part of that for you to continue to save energy.
This is great. This is exciting. I just thank you for having the opportunity to explain a little bit more. I don't have any other questions.
All right, Commissioner McKissick.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. Could you explain to me what the difference would be in the electronic notice that you would send out if you anticipated that there was a need to control the amount of electricity being generated, not generated, but used and consumed, because you were anticipating a potential load shedding event? I mean, what would that notice look like? How would it contrast and be compared to what you sent out to encourage energy conservation? Because in my mind, that's the critical distinction and needs to be zeroed in terms of the way we communicate with consumers.
Correct. So I can read two of the texts, and again, I have Taryn Sims here who can provide more information if necessary. So I'm going to read the example of the MyHer Peak Load Management Alert text from the event. Tomorrow, 2024-0105, we anticipate energy demand to be high. Please take steps to minimize power use 6 to 9 a.m. to keep energy demand low. Get tips at, and there is a link, type stop to cancel future notifications. So again, that was the peak load management alert sent on the 4th. Now I'll read the hard plea conservation, or the hard conservation plea that was used previously. Duke Energy. Extreme temperatures are driving unusually high energy demand in our area, and available power reserves are currently limited. You can help us protect the electric grid and avoid possible emergency outages by cutting back on non-essential energy use tomorrow morning from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. We appreciate any assistance you're able to provide. Get energy savings tips at, and there's a link, text stop to cancel.
Now, it sounds to me that, you know, the last one you read was very clear. It was unambiguous. It seems to me that there just needs to be more consumer education about the differences between these types of notifications that they would be receiving. Do you have any ideas or about how that can be effectively done? Because, I mean, the content of each message seems appropriate, in all honesty, and I commend you, as other commissioners have, for launching this type of program to try to conserve energy. But I mean, what can be done in terms of consumer education so that people can really understand the differences between the type of alerts that they'd be receiving in the future?
It's a great question, and one that we'll continue to investigate. But over the last couple of days, one of the things that we have talked about was to make sure that the peak load management alert was tied to the MyHer program, so that customers really understood that it was from the MyHer program that they were receiving this.
So that's just one example that we've talked about. But as I mentioned, we are going to be going through a process improvement event where we, determine other opportunities to provide more clarity in these types of communications and the alerts.
And let me ask this question, and you may know the answer, you may not. I mean, I know there are times when I get alerts, and they're weather notification alerts, there are alerts dealing with some child being abducted. I mean, there are all types that we receive today, but there's an actual audible sound that comes, that distinguishes that alert from other things that you may be receiving alerts relating to. To what extent is it feasible or possible, if there's a load shedding type of event that could be anticipated, that there might be something audible that might be used as a characteristic to distinguish it from just an alert dealing with her that's encouraging conservation?
I'm going to ask my colleague Taryn Sims to address that question.
Right, okay, yeah. So we will absolutely look into that. That is part of what we were investigating as we went through last year's investigation, and we made our recommendations. So that's part of what we will look into, the emergency notification system. And that's what we would want to be linked into to be able to do that.
I think that'd be an excellent thing to investigate, because that might be consumer education is a part of the equation, but the other part is making certain that there's an actual distinction, so that when you're just encouraging conservation, which we all want to do, that's something that can be promoted without somebody feeling as if, this is an emergency or pending emergency event.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're going to work on, is making sure that we focus in on how to distinguish the two in a distinctive way, and continue to educate customers. And to build on to what you're saying, we will use all of our other channels to make sure we're continuing to reinforce this. So what we are trying to do for customers and the customer value of these programs, in addition to the overall value for the company in general, and as we move forward, that's what we'll focus on.
Thank you. And the last question is kind of an anecdotal question, and I asked Mr. Duff about it. I know there was a time when I was up at a conference of Appalachian State University. I think you and Lon Huber were there. And I showed you on my phone a notification that came to me from Jones Onslow, small company that basically contrasted and compared my energy the prior month with what, and what the weather conditions would be like, based upon the square footage of the structure. And that was a very effective tool in incentivizing conservation, and compared what was reasonable in terms of an increase, in terms of what you might have paid for electricity, versus what would have been waste. And some of that would have been weather related. It looked like a really good program, and I can say, based upon my receiving those notifications, it certainly incentivizes me in terms of things I might do. Have you had a chance to follow up?
So, yes, we've taken that to the program team to look at the value. As I mentioned earlier, we're constantly looking for enhancements, because it is a long-term engagement. And we want customers to be empowered to become more efficient and make their efficiency matter to the utility system. So yeah, we brought that back. The program team is looking at it, again, trying to figure out how to work the enhancements in is something that's an ongoing process, but that specific one is being looked at.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And I think it was an extremely effective tool being used by them, and perhaps it could be used by Duke, I don't know. And I look forward to learning more about your investigations. Thank you.
All right, let's see if there are any additional questions. All right, well, with that, we appreciate your being here today and providing us with this helpful context and letting us know actions you're going to take moving forward. Again, I encourage you all to get these alerts back into effect as soon as possible, given that we're so early in the winter. All right, with that, you all may step down. Thank you. And Ms. Boswell, you may come on up.
Good morning, Michelle Boswell, the Public Staff Accounting Division. It is my pleasure to introduce to you all this morning our newest staff member, Mr. Brandon Hunter. Mr. Hunter is a graduate of UNC Wilmington with both a bachelor's and master's in accountancy and has spent 5 years in corporate accounting with financial analysis and reconciliation.
All right, well, good morning, Mr. Hunter. It's very nice to meet you. Thank you for your willingness to work for the public staff. Look forward to seeing more of you, and welcome. So thank you.
Thank you. Look forward to working with you.
All right, let me check in to see if there's any additional business for the commission this morning before we call it a day. All right, hearing none, we'll be adjourned. Thank you very much. Let's go off the record, please.